We're going to be going live with Japhy Ryder on World Pirate Radio in just a few minutes. They're just playing their intro now. In the meantime, while we're in the background, and I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. Tomorrow I'll be heading down to Otara to help out with the... Oh, we do have some audio. That's good. Sorry guys, you'll have to forgive me in the background here. They've got World Pirate Radio. I'm just going to mute them out. All right, here we go.
Come now, all you mangy dogs. Swab the decks and hoist the sails. The guns on board be needing some proper manning. Pieces of 8 and a fine wench on your arm. If your work be not too shoddy. Careful not to flounder too badly, though, or you may have to dance the hempen jig as we see you to Davy Jones. The Japhy, my boy, on with the show.
Welcome, everybody, friends, folks, foes, and fellow pirate mateys, to this week's latest. Welcome, everybody, Friday night, folks, foes, feature installment of Pirate Radio Podcasts. It's episode this week's number 100 and Friday night 93. Feature installment of Pirate Radio Podcasts.
I'm getting double
office. Ryder and got a great guest.
Well, hold on, I'm hearing you twice, Japhy.
Robin Hood's Chief Communications Officer. Do you have your
Japhy.
YouTube, Ryder? Do you have a great YouTube coming through? Is that the problem?
Well, hold on, I'm hearing you twice, Japhy.
Oh, do you have your YouTube?
No, that's not the issue. I think it seems to have resolved itself. It's going fine now.
Oh, well, that's good. Okay. So, yeah, return guest, capping off our July 2020 schedule. We once again welcome New Zealand's very own live streaming.
No. It is repeating back. So you guys are repeating back over
capping off our July 2020 schedule. We once again welcome New Zealand's very own. That would have to be your YouTube live streaming.
No. I don't have the YouTube. Oh, wait. I see what it is. I got it. Sorry, my bad.
Check one, 1, 2, 1, 2.
It's all good now. Your website automatically plays your broadcast, which is actually a neat feature. I had no idea that was the case.
Okay. Hey, so once again, capping off our July 2020 schedule, we once again welcome New Zealand's very own live streaming mega sensation, Mr. Vinny Eastwood. This will yet again be a network simulcast. We've put a couple of these sort of shows together to this point over the last year or so now, and we joined forces tonight, this afternoon over here in Asia, 12 p.m. noon. I think it's 4 p.m. in New Zealand, in producing optimal cosmic corona-busting synergy. So, and let us just remind our listeners that the only thing worse than living in a high-tech police state is having to listen to Vinny's bad jokes. So be prepared for that. Although I must say, Vinny, entering into the latest New Zealand election cycle, I guess you're working on toning things down as far as the comedy is concerned. Is that not the case?
Yeah, that is the case. I've been listening very carefully to criticism of the broadcast, and it is putting a lot of people off my traditional approach. So the concept is to behave as though I were a professional broadcaster, and after 12 years doing professional broadcasting, I think it's about time.
Yeah, I think I think you've got something there, most definitely. So we will see how things play out on the electoral front. Before we get to that, though, let's just remind our audience that we have here waiting in the wings a couple fellow pirate mateys, longtime friends of the show, and gentlemen who from time to time do like to drop by. We've got well, let's see if we can connect with Reverend Jim to begin with here. He was making his way up onto the crow's nest, and as always, before we really get into the meat of what we have to offer here as far as the show is concerned, we like to connect with him. Have you managed to make it to the top of the crow's nest yet, Jim, or where are we?
I have, and looks like we've already got a few people over here on YouTube, and we got a few people here on D Live, and looks like we're set to sell. And it ought to be a good show. I enjoy Vinny very much. I remember last time he was on. It was a good show. Welcome back.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back. We have 31 people watching on the Vinny Eastwood channel and 11 watching on the New Zealand Public Party channel.
We've got 10 over here between YouTube and D Live, and once again, I'm not sure if Facebook is going to be shutting us down. As I was saying to you guys, actually, just in the audio tech check end of things, that we were quickly running prior to kicking things off here. We were having some problems just this past Tuesday, as a matter of fact, with the news stream. So it looks like we might be okay, though, believe it or not. So that's good. Yes, indeed, that they have allowed us access once again. D Live has been known to sometimes shut people down as well, too. There was once that we were producing an organ harvesting show with Mitchell Gerber, and of course, well, you see, D Live is actually, a lot of people don't know this, but it's the Chinese Communist Party, who I believe is actually pulling the strings from behind the scenes as far as that platform is concerned. Just follow the money, folks. But before we carry on any further, as promised, I want to just turn our attention to another old friend and fellow pirate matey, someone who's been laid low as of late, actually, and just managed to find himself on the road to recovery the past number of weeks, from the sounds of things. So, Pirate Larry up there on Dead Man's Bluff, how goes it, my friend?
Well, Japhy, there's certainly a lot of skulls and bones on Dead Man's Bluff. Looks like they had a lot of bluffs and a lot of battles down there. But we should be able to pick up some nice swords and muskets. So I'm surveying the area.
Yeah, and you're based out of Baja, California, too. So that's a pretty unique perspective. We always love to hear from you. So if you have anything to offer here along the way, be sure to let us know. We're going to check back with both you and Reverend Jim probably about midway through this week's live stream, and just along with the end of things as we wrap the show up. But other than that, I suppose that's good enough for...
I'll keep an eye out for anything that moves.
There you go. It's always on the hunt for the crack, and you know, Vinny, I'm sure you've seen more than your fair share of the beast over the years.
As a heterosexual man, I can honestly say that no, I haven't seen, but I would like to give people a little bit of reassurance that today I'm extremely exhausted. So if I'm a little bit off and not totally on my game and perhaps a little dull, that's why.
Yeah, I kind of picked up on that. Just, you know, we only had a brief 5-minute audio tech check, and it seemed, I was going to ask you if you had a headache or something. So maybe you've picked up a little bit of the corona bug. You know, most people don't even know.
Well, last night, a old friend Lance from back in the days when I was filming dance parties, the shift parties, he gave me a ring, and he's been having a real hard time. struggling with addiction and loneliness and looking after his mother who's got Alzheimer's, and I haven't talked to him for nearly a decade, and so I had a chat with him for 2 hours past my bedtime, because honestly, when people are in true distress and they reach out to you, it's usually a good idea, whatever sacrifices need be made, to be there for them and to listen and give them what advice you can.
Indeed, I fully concur, and it can be quite draining, of course, and difficult. Nobody likes to see anyone, when they find themselves with their back against the wall or up against the ropes, to a lot of people with post-traumatic stress disorder and things along those lines, various mental distresses and diseases, that it can all lead to a pretty dark place ultimately. And I've dealt with depression myself over the years. As a matter of fact, I'm just lucky that I've got a supportive spouse and a network, really. So really, I think that's what's most critical when it comes right down to it, is that we have support networks. We have people to talk to. Talk therapy is a powerful thing.
And in our modern age, most people are not very empathetic, and in fact, they're very self-absorbed. And so when you start talking about your real issues and things that you need somebody to really listen to you, it's hard to find people that actually will listen. And when you go to, for example, psychiatrists, psychologists, and try to get some help that way, they charge a lot of money, but they might not necessarily be listening to you per se, especially if they're frontline staff, especially if they're emotionally exhausted. And this happens to me from time to time as a broadcaster, where taking on people's pain, taking on people's trauma, actually listening to them, you don't just dissipate that pain, you don't just dissipate that trauma, it attaches itself to you kind of like a parasite. And often people on front line in this regard will need significant periods of time off, otherwise they will only be able to show sympathy, not empathy. What's the difference? Sympathy is synthetic empathy.
Yeah, you look at the word sympathy, actually, break it down etymologically. Apparently, it means suffering with. Well, let me get that straight. That's compassion, rather. I shouldn't say that. So, just to be clear, I misspoke. Compassion is the suffering with. And this is a fascinating area as well, too. Sympathy versus empathy. And could you maybe just try to elaborate a little further as far as the distinction is concerned?
I actually can't. It's called the Pareto distribution. You know how you wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time? You know how 20% of the people accomplish 80% of the work? And you know how 20% of the work you do gets 80% of the results? That's called the Pareto distribution. So I will have a look at the 20% of information that gives me 80% of the knowledge, and instead of doing the other 80% to get the other 20%, I'll just be like, nah, I've learned what I've learned, and simply calling sympathy a form of synthetic empathy, I believe, basically does the note. But moving on from that and talking about just in general, I think that to a large degree we are very saturated with media. We are in front of screens all the time, and we're not doing a whole bunch of human interaction like we would be doing, say, just 20 years ago. And as a result, I think that part of our humanity, part of our capacity to listen, to care, to hug others has been greatly diminished. And I think that in and of itself is part of the definition of what really makes us human. And I'm concerned that myself and many others are becoming less human by the day as we are socially isolated and distanced from each other.
That's a great point, along with the fact of how so much social media really just dominates in a big way. Electronics technology, as you say, FaceTime in front of computer screens and so forth, that I'm really conscientious and aware of that. It's one of the reasons we only do 2 shows a week. It's the reason I don't own a spy phone. It's the reason that you don't ever see me on camera. And so on and so forth. You know, there's certain. I'm not a total Luddite when it comes to technology, but I try to moderate. And if I can't choose how I engage the technology around me in my environment, what's out there, that's a problem. You know, when it's. Yeah. Sure.
I think that technology, we need to be thinking of it in terms of a weapon, okay? If you're not... sorry, let me back up. If you're fighting a war against people who are armed with an Abrams tank or a 50 caliber machine gun, and you're going up against them with a musket, you're going to lose. And that means that from my perspective, the more we use technology, it's not so much what technology we use, it's how we're using it. And I am blessed to have supporters of my show like Benny Mac, who's one of the moderators on my channel, who's given me such great advice and such wisdom. Like, the reason why my green screen works without it blotching out in the background is because Benny helped me position my lights correctly. The reason why I have a detached cinema camera as my webcam is because Benny showed me the cables and things of that nature that were actually done to use that, and it's improved the quality of the show by a significant margin. And I think that because the technology of the show, the look of the show, and the smoothness of it has been improved. It improves it for the end user. People want to see you, Japhy. They want to communicate with you. They want to get given a shout out for being in the chat room, that kind of thing. Speaking of which, Spiraling69 over here has said, Vinny, be professional, but also be yourself. And I completely understand this, and some people, especially my long-term listeners who've been used to my far more bombastic and silly, frankly, way of doing things. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show. They've been concerned that perhaps I'm not being myself anymore, and I want to assure you guys that that's not the case. I am completely 100% myself. I've just become a more restrained version, and this next month, the month of August, I am going to be experimenting with this restrained version. For example, you guys may have heard the old intro to the show. The new intro is, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vinny Eastwood Show. I'm not a credible journalist. I'm an incredible journalist, and my very special guest is Japhy Ryder, you know, just like that. And so it's still got the humour in there. It's still got the lighter side that I like to bring to things. However, I've simply changed the tonality in my voice, and instead of laughing at my own jokes for minutes, which my band told me was starting to grate on them a little bit, I've decided to restrain that Vinny Eastwood beast just a little bit, because at the moment it is election season, and my country is on the line, and if I must make sacrifices and maybe frankly enjoy the shows perhaps a little less doing it in this vein, I think it is a worthy sacrifice to make, considering what is at stake.
Yeah, and there is, as always, a great deal at stake. How, and we can get into that more if you like. Clearly, there's a lot of pressure on you. You would presume you put yourself out there in the public's eye and the spotlight, making yourself a real target for those who don't.
Well, one time I got asked by Luke Hurley, who's a great guitarist here in New Zealand. We were doing a live performance with my bandmate at Cafe 1-to-1 on Ponsonby Road, and Luke came up to me outside and he says, "Vinny, do you think that by doing what you're doing, you're putting yourself, in danger?" And I said, "Well, one can only hope." And we laughed, and this is how you dispel the fear, because I think to a large degree we are not suffering from fear as much as we are indifference, and it's time for us to kill that indifference. It's time for us to defeat that defeatism. The world is on the line here, and all of us need to be giving 100% to this fight. If that means restraining ourselves so that a wider audience can enjoy it and not be put off with it in such a way, again, self-sacrifice for the good of others is what a activist Russell Malcolm told me is the true mark of a leader.
Self-sacrifice for others, definitely something to consider and to reflect upon, no doubt about that. When it comes to what is currently afoot in New Zealand, there's a new party, the New Zealand Policy Party, I believe is the name, if I've got that straight. What do they stand for exactly? Are they offering a genuine alternative to the current status quo, and do they potentially stand to take the country in a way which will in the end prove to be refreshing, as well as many other positive things that in a populist sense, I suppose, everything that the 1% elites despise, I suppose, in many ways would come down to that.
Imagine for a moment that you brought a politician onto your show and you spend an hour coming up with every single question about every single conspiracy that you've been covering for the last decade on your broadcasts, and they give you straight up answers with no BS, with no pauses. Okay? Does that sound extraordinary to you? It was to me. I've never seen anything like this in my life. This is a whole new ball game, and that's Billy TK, the leader of the party, and we have, I say we, but I'm not a collectivist. The party has merged with Advance New Zealand, Jamie Lee Ross's party. Jamie Lee Ross is a former National Party member of Parliament who exposed the fact that the Communist Chinese Party were bribing both sides of the House, both the Labour and the National Party. And so naturally, because he blew the whistle on bribery and corruption, he's now fallen under the investigation of the Serious Fraud Office, because that is the modus operandi of a corrupt country that is owned by the Communist Chinese, is that those people who blow the whistle on corruption are indeed the ones who get blamed for the corruption instead of the corrupt ones. When I had first heard about the New Zealand Public Party, I had been working for the Aotearoa Legalised Cannabis Party, and I was called by Michael Stace, who set up the New Zealand Public Party website, asking if perhaps the Aotearoa Legalised Cannabis Party would consider changing their name. And after 3 years working with that party, I laughed and just said there is absolutely no chance that the Legalised Cannabis Party that has been around for 25 years, doing the exact same thing election after election and getting the exact same results election after election, which is the definition of insanity. So when I said that to Michael, he then said, well, the second part of my call is, would you be willing to help out the party? And at the time I was thinking that I'd helped out the Outdoors Party, who were really, really good people. I'd helped out the Legalised Cannabis Party, really good people. But they hadn't paid me for my time or really shown much appreciation. And because I'm a fragile, egotistical narcissist, not being appreciated is indeed quite a difficult thing for me to deal with. So I said to them, look, just straight up, give me $1,000. $1,000 is nothing. And it wasn't, to help them or anything like that. It was just a test. I was just testing them to see whether or not they would take me seriously and actually show me some appreciation that I felt I deserved because of the work that I do and have been doing for the New Zealand public for the last decade plus. And there was no negotiation or anything like that. They sent me a contract, I signed it, sent it back, and the money was in my account. And I said, okay, great. Now I know that you are taking it seriously. And what they thought they were paying for was one show a week. And I was like, no. 5 shows a week. And this makes it 6 for this week. And I did their live streams on a Sunday the other day, and I haven't had a day off in 2 weeks. And of course, I'm going to go do another live stream tomorrow. The money is inconsequential to me when my nation, my people, my history is at stake. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's what I've always been doing. I won't work for people. I work with people. And they passed the test. They take me seriously, gave me the coin. Okay, great. You put your money where your mouth was. Now I'm going to show you what it's like to be supported by Vinny Eastwood from the Vinny Eastwood Show. And we've done a month's worth of broadcasts thus far. And I have brought on international experts on so many different fields of research in order to add information and quality to the New Zealand Public Party's repertoire. People like G. Edward Griffin, Dr. Rima Labo, or the writer of the Silver Manifesto, and various other people who have got basically the top in their fields, in their particular veins of research. People even like Mark Passio and former Freemason experts and things of that nature, because what I learned over my tenure doing what I'm doing is that the issues that face America are facing New Zealand. The issues that face those in the UK are facing New Zealand. We are already in a new world order. This is the same problems that I see in every nation, and I think that I'm in a unique position as the top interviewer in this country to bring the local and international experts to bear to advise the party, to inform its voting base about the real issues here and give them context. And I believe that this is part of the reason why I have changed my format a little bit. The main reason why I've changed my format and the way that I'm conducting my interviews and conducting my shows is mainly due to Billy TK himself, Billy TK. He's a great musician. Apparently, I don't know, I haven't really heard him play, but he is a incredible speaker. He has a research background within New Zealand Army intelligence, and every single question I've thrown at him, he has answered straight away without trying to hide anything. I've never seen that in a political candidate, and I felt this odd sensation in my heart, Japhy. I hadn't felt it before. Maybe I didn't recognize what it was. It was a few weeks later that I recognized, oh my God, what is that? Is that hope? Like I felt hope, Japhy. For a cynical journalist such as myself, that is the rarest commodity. It's so rare, in fact, that I didn't even recognize it when I felt it. But now I am feeling it. And it's not just because of Billy. It's not just because of his statesman-like delivery of the facts, his profound respect for the craft of simple human communication. It was because the listeners, Japhy, the amount of support that the public has come out with, not only for me and my show since starting to help this, but of course for the party itself. When polls are put online where we're able to contribute to them, the Advanced New Zealand Public Party has come up number one every time on these online polls where people are able to contribute. There is a massive army of people out there who, like myself, for goodness knows how long, have seen and felt no hope in the political spectrum whatsoever, and now a spark has turned into a fire, and that will fan the flames of freedom in this country. And it is my deepest honour and pleasure to be involved, to be contributing to the saving of my nation. For the first time ever, I feel like we can win. We can actually win this.
New Zealand operates on a proportional representation. That's the way that they calculate and break down the votes. Is that not the case? Australia?
It's called MMP, mixed member proportional voting. Mm-hmm. So the way that it works is, and it's very complex, so I'm going to try and simplify it as best I can. Let's say I'm in Green Bay, okay, and in my suburb Green Bay, we're part of what's known as the New Lynn electorate, right? So New Lynn's a suburb just down the road from me, and there's a certain amount of people within this. So there's a bunch of electorates across the country, and each of those electorates you can stand as an independent candidate and be elected to represent that electorate, right? But it's two-tone. So not only can you theoretically win a seat in Parliament by just campaigning in one area, you can also win seats in Parliament by getting a party vote. And you need a minimum of 5% of the party vote in order to get in. And that is basically how it works. You get 2 ticks, one for your electorate candidate and one for the party vote. And at the moment we're trying to, at least based upon the advice of John Ansell, who's probably underrated. He might be, in my opinion, the greatest advertising mind of the 21st century in New Zealand. And it's a very big disappointment and sadness for me that he hasn't come out and supported this party. but I did get him on the show anyway to give his honest evaluation and criticism of the party. We should not be going for 5%. We should be going for 51% of the party vote so that we can govern alone. Take out all of these mainstream parties who are all for Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and amalgamating New Zealand into a global dynasty. This is something that must be opposed, and we must win. We must have victory this election, because there is no second chance. They've taken our guns, they've taken our free speech, and soon they are going to be introducing bills to regulate the internet. They can lock us down at will and prevent us from being able to campaign, Japhy. So this is perhaps the most important election in New Zealand history, and in fact it may be the most important election in world history. Let me explain what I mean by that. Because this is the first time that a party that is openly against world government, openly against the United Nations, openly against the corruption and lack of transparency, openly against tyranny. If we win here, this could be the first domino to fall, and the rest of the world is watching us at the moment. And I believe that if we win, they will be inspired to rise up in their own respective ways with their own people, their own leaders, and I believe New Zealand will be behind them 100% of the way. We can take this world back, and we must. Sorry for being a bit serious there, but yes.
I've got to hand it to you. You know, my hat's off to you. You're doing the great work, and you know, the things that we're going through in the United States. It's the Chinese Cultural Revolution, you know, translated into American, and I think it's going to fall flat on its face, but it's pretty scary, you know, and because it has a lot of support. It has support from, you know, invisible players like George Soros and the United Nations, and you know, and China, the Chinese government is supporting chaos. So, you know, for you to stand up against that and take a stand and have a party that you know, gives people hope, my hat's off to you. I wanted to say that.
Well, I'm grateful for that.
One of the reasons we refer to what we have here at WPRPN as the People's Pirate Network. Vinny, you may be aware that there has been a pirate political movement across the world that has emerged, and we're doing our thing here, most definitely, although there is no formal affiliation that we hold with any of these established players. Unfortunately, I haven't heard too many good things about what has arisen, mostly because of what is said to be too much in the way of political correctness, basically. So my personal thinking when it comes to that is, well, you know, I look at things in a pretty libertarian way and vantage point. So if any policies impede upon, infringe upon, or prey upon our basic human, you know, personal liberties, that becomes a problem, especially with things like free speech, of course, and whatnot. But what are the issues that are at stake as you see them? What are people talking about in New Zealand? Agenda 21 was one of the things you mentioned. China's role in the region, of course, they've been hugely active in the South Asian Pacific area of the world building artificial islands and spreading out in a big way to the point where it's even become worrisome, I guess, to the Pentagon, apparently. They've bought up half of Tasmania, from what I just recently heard the other day. They own a huge stake of Jeju-do here in South Korea. That's the island, if you look at the map, at the southernmost tip of the peninsula. Southwest part of the map is where you'll want to be looking. But yeah, what are the issues then, as far as what people are talking about? And you talked about a coalition of sorts, the two parties coming together. That's great. People, you have to be able to work together, for crying out loud. People have to be able to compromise a little bit, work together, and in the spirit of knowing that if in doing so that they can accomplish ultimately victory.
Well, I share the sentiment. However, the reality is far less fortunate than one would hope. And politics, if I may be so bold, is the domain of the narcissistic and the mentally ill predominantly. There are occasionally men and women who are neither, who are more than willing to sacrifice their own time and money to try and say the truth and do what is right. And correspondingly, they receive very little or no media coverage, or if they do receive media coverage, it is negative of them. And there has been talk of coalitions and things of that nature. And I believe, to a large degree, when I was asked by a Stuff reporter, that's a publication here in New Zealand that recently sold for $1 because it was doing so poorly, and that was directly after they disabled the comment sections because all the commenters completely disagreed with their assessments. He asked me, is it possible to form a coalition and get all these other smaller minor parties on board, or is it more likely that the Advance New Zealand Public Party will just basically take all of their votes and leave them flapping in the breeze, to put to a piracy spin on it? And I said I would prefer the former to be the case, a coalition, an alliance against evil. But realistically speaking, it is most likely going to be the latter. These other parties, if I may be so bold, in the last election, all of them, and I think this is about maybe 10 minor parties collectively, got less than 1% of the vote between them. And they've come out saying that the Advance New Zealand Public Party is trying to steal their votes. I was comically laughing at this. It's like a homeless person complaining about people trying to steal their money when you don't have any money, bro. So again, I am very saddened by their response. There's been a lot of infighting, a lot of aggression, a lot of accusations with no evidence levelled at Billy and the party itself. Jamie Lee Ross, after exposing the recording with I believe the former National Party lead member Simon Bridges, talking about taking a $100,000 donation from a Chinese investor in order to replace one of their members of parliament with one of his own people. That leaked, that came out. I listened to that recording, and this is a number of years ago. And Jamie Lee Ross has since come out and said that this is not just happening to the National Party, which is the second largest party. This is also happening in the Labour Party, the largest party at the moment, and the one currently in power. And justice system essentially coming out against him and attempting to attack him may seem quizzical to some, but not to me. To me, I have seen and I have heard and I have interviewed people who have been through similar instances within this country exposing corruption, be they from the Ombudsman's office or the Serious Fraud Office or the Auditor General or the Solicitor General, and the only thing that I have seen prevail in those attempts is evil. Each and every time corruption is uncovered, it is covered back up in short order. And so there may be a possibility that the Chinese infiltration of New Zealand is so strong at the moment that this election may not be allowed to go ahead, that Jamie Lee Ross may be sent to jail. Now, it's interesting because he exposed bribes being given to the National Party, and now he's being charged with taking bribes from the Chinese. You see the irony there, and this is New Zealand. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're unfamiliar, look at the Cayman Islands, former British banking colony, currently run by organised crime with huge quantities of money laundering coming through its banking system. What do you think New Zealand is? We are the South Pacific equivalent of the Cayman Islands in figment. And we have more corruption here than most people would ever believe.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So Canada, very similar state of affairs as far as what I can gather. On the surface of things, on the international stage, the reputation Canada has is that of a quite more squeaky clean, I guess, image in a lot of people's eyes. But the fact of the matter is that over the years there's been countless underhanded and just nefarious projects that have occurred all the way back, including the MK Ultra. Let's not forget that's a classic, of course. But there's just I mean, the thing that's what journalism is supposed to be all about, and that I think both of us do agree. You've talked about this quite extensively, how the mainstream media really they've fallen down on the job. They're not really serving the best interests of the people as a whole, and not bothering to report on a lot of stories that they could really, given the chance that it's sitting right there in front of them. The Epstein, that whole saga is a classic example of how, I mean, we were in the underground here, the digital underground. We were on to that for several years before, and constantly bringing it up, talking about it, making it known that, this is a big story. There's a few other big stories that the mainstream media is currently not covering that I could share with you as well too, including what is referred to as the FBI has called their Operation Lurking Giants. Hardly anyone at all covering that, and once again that heavily implicates Chinese corruption, Saudi corruption, and various other Middle Eastern countries were named in the one report that I think it was Newsweek put together. But it's something where I guess, I, as a member of the Fifth Estate, I proudly wear that as a badge of honor. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term or not, the Fifth Estate, but
I believe it was the Fourth Estate.
No. Maybe Pirate Larry or Reverend Jim can help out on this one. But you have the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary branches of government. The fourth is, I guess, from what I recall, that is the mainstream media. Now, we bloggers and what they call here in South Korea, they refer to as Netzians, basically just citizen journalists. We largely constitute what is referred to as the fifth estate. So it's a powerful thing, and I do believe that, as you pointed out, or you raised the issue earlier, the powers that be wanting to shut us down, not so that we're not able to have a conversation, that we're not able, the world is not able to hear voices which run contrary to the mainstream narrative. Justin Trudeau, I don't think I brought this up with you last time we spoke, but it was the Heritage Minister, as I recall. He floated this trial balloon proposal whereby all journalists in Canada would require a state-issued license to operate and to report on any happenings throughout Canada, across the various provinces, at whatever level, community level, provincial, or national. So it's utterly ridiculous, of course, to the state's intrusiveness, overreach, and so forth. But that's what they're I think pushing for. That they would love to see that. I don't know if they're going to have much popular support,
if I may,
behind that.
This is Agenda 21. Or Behind the Green Mask by Rosa Corey, that the YouTube listeners can see on the screen now. And what she's elaborated upon within this book is that, in my summation, Agenda 21 is the complete and utter takeover and centralization of every animal, vegetable, mineral, and information source. The information source part is kind of key there. And the conglomeration that we've seen of mainstream media over time, going from 500 media corporations in the United States to 5, and now 4, and Lucasfilm and everything being brought under the Disney umbrella. So we are being controlled not by force, but by thought. The thoughts that are being put in front of us are not our own, and they are subtly and gently crafted in order to create a subservient population that is sufficiently distracted and sufficiently indifferent so that they don't get in the way of important people and their plans for you and your children. Now, to back up a little bit on the New Zealand situation, I saw Texas Nortons and a number of other people hearing me describe New Zealand and saying that now I feel depressed. And depression is the last stage of the grief process before you reach acceptance. Most people will never reach acceptance. Please understand that. But if you are feeling depressed, that is not necessarily a bad thing, okay? The sun will rise again, no matter how dark the clouds or the night is. Now, the part of the reason why New Zealand has been so corrupt, while the world believes, and in fact most New Zealanders believe it's the quote-unquote least corrupt country in the world, is primarily because of an organisation known as Transparency International. And famed activist Penny Bright, and I run the Honouring Penny Bright Facebook page, she has uncovered the fact that most of the corrupt entities within New Zealand are, in fact, the signatories behind Transparency International's investigation to corruption going on in New Zealand. Furthermore, on top of that, the Transparency International questionnaire to bring about the Corruption Perception Index. Remember, this is not the Corruption Index, it's the Corruption, quote-unquote, Perception Index. The forms that they send out to New Zealand and the rest of the world are voluntary. So technically they can say, hey, New Zealand, have you guys got any corruption there? And New Zealand can say, why no? We don't. And send the form back blank. Now, I don't want to lie to people. I don't want to mince words, because I'm afraid it's too late for that. The gently approach has done its dash, and it has not worked, and people now need the truth, the whole truth, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how frightening. You must deal with reality. And I was speaking with, as I mentioned in the earlier part of the broadcast, a person the other night, and I talked to him about this concept that I've come up with called hacking the reality stream. So there are two rivers that are running through around this world. One is the reality stream, and the other is the BS stream. Now, at some point in the mid-20th century, the reality stream was hacked and changed courses and diverted, and now we are living in the BS stream. So, according to a former CIA director, once our disinformation campaign is complete, everything the American public believe will be the opposite of the truth. And that's what I call hacking the reality stream. So I'm afraid the days for mincing words, for telling comfortable lies, is over. We must hear the truth now, no matter how much we fear it, no matter how much it hurts to hear it. We must suffer the truth if we are to acknowledge it, if we are to spread it. Now, furthermore, to give a little bit of background on the Chinese infiltration problem, this was highlighted in a book called Totalitaria by, in my opinion, one of the countries, if not the nation of New Zealand's premier investigative journalists and writers, Ian Wishart, who I've had on my show a number of times. Tried to get him back on a number more times, but he's just so busy, and he has like 10 children or something like that. So he's a great family man, and it's amazing that he keeps coming out with books every year. In his book Totalitaria, which I did, I think, 5 chapters of audio books for the first 5 chapters. You can find them on my channel. Just search Totalitaria Vinny Eastwood. And in the chapter The Secret War for Control, it covers an investigation, or at least part of the chapter covers an investigation by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I believe this was in it might have been late 90s or early 2000s, but the timing's inconsequential, because what they found was quite interesting. How it works is the triads, the Chinese mafia, and the CIA of the Chinese Communist Party, commonly known as the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, intelligence, joined forces. Now, the triads had a lot of money, drug money, that they needed to launder. And the Chinese People's Army intelligence had a lot of countries that they wanted to infiltrate and take over from within. They wanted to penetrate the governments, they wanted to own the land, they wanted to control the businesses and the economy, therefore. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police investigation was shut down at the highest levels, which means that at the time that they conducted this investigation, the Prime Minister's Office of Canada had already been penetrated. This is what they found, that 80% of downtown Vancouver was owned by the Chinese. That 100% of Canada's major ports had a Chinese triad presence. How did this get accomplished? Well, the drug money is used for bribes, mainly of diplomats and other diplomatic personnel to give passports and citizenship to Chinese agents. Now, these are just ordinary Chinese people who are being sent to New Zealand, being sent to Canada, being sent to, wherever in the world. And what they were instructed to do is, with the huge amount of drug money that has been laundered, they are to purchase a home for themselves. They are to purchase a local business and to not change the name of the business. They will sit there, they will raise their family, they will make their children study really, really hard in school so that they can get good grades and top marks. Then they will encourage them to enter into university, where they will be again pressured to study very, very hard and get the top marks. Once they graduate, they will be encouraged again to get government jobs. So this is how it works over a long period of time. Now you know why there was a report that came out that said over 50% of home sales in Auckland were by people with Chinese-sounding names. And then the Labour Party came out and said, no, those people aren't Chinese citizens, they're actually New Zealand citizens. Exactly, because they had New Zealand passports. So a foreign agent came over here with the New Zealand passport issued to them by the Hong Kong embassy. And so then when they purchase your land, it's being recorded as being purchased by a New Zealand citizen. Okay? And because they're buying up all your businesses as well, they're taking over your economy. And so they'll then raise all the rents because the house prices have gone up because these homes are being bought in cash. So now New Zealanders can't buy homes in their own nation because of the Chinese infiltration. Now New Zealanders can't pay the rent for their businesses as well, or can't make a decent cup of coffee because they have to pay the rent because the rent is so high because of the amount of money that's being funneled in for the purchase of New Zealand businesses and New Zealand homes by the communist Chinese infiltrators. Now this is mirrored in pretty much every Western nation. No Western nation so far has said no to communist infiltration, and the New Zealand Public Party and Advance New Zealand, particularly Jamie Lee Ross, are the first, perhaps in the world, political party to expose this issue and give it the serious attention that it deserves. But at the moment, as mentioned previous, the government agencies have been penetrated. The Prime Minister's office has been penetrated. This is not going to be a simple lock, stock and barrel removal of corruption. The corruption is the country at present, and we have a lot of work to do, and people need to get up and speak the truth as loud, as proud, and as respectfully, and as cogently, and as calmly as they can, to set a good example for how this issue, and many others like it, can be tackled with credibility.
Well said, Vinny, as is most typically the case. So in case people out there are wondering, this is episode number 193 of Pirate Radio Podcast. We are speaking with live streaming mega sensation, New Zealand's one and only Vinny Eastwood. You know, we got a lot of people out there listening as well too right now that I'd like to give a bit of a shout out to this particular moment, including Dana Shiver, Anti-Semitic Kiwi, Zen in the Car, On the Fence with Musa. That's a mutual friend of ours, I do believe. Vinny, On the Fence with Musa, Joey Boomer. Who else do we have here? This is just on YouTube where people are joining into the fray. So making actually one of the comments, so many great comments here, but one of the particular comments that Anti-Semitic Kiwi left here via YouTube is how there was a New Zealand politician, for example, who told New Zealanders what China would bring if let into the country. And of course, he was called a racist, which is interesting because, as far as I can tell, it's not so much a race issue as this is the Chinese Communist Party. This is an ideological. These are dangerous totalitarians, really.
They are the most dangerous at this point. And I'm so sorry to interrupt, but these things need to be given context. China didn't just build itself up from nothing. It was Western money from globalists that went into China to set up all its technology, to set up all its manufacturing base. It is now touted as going to be the new center for the United Nations. They have Chinese troops in blue helmets and things of that nature. So when you hear Chinese Communist Party, imagine for a moment that it is synonymous with the New World Order, the United Nations, and a technocratic global control grid that has nothing to do with race or individuals, and it has everything to do with money, infiltration, corruption, scumbaggery.
Radical Islam, of course, is another major hot button issue, and something that requires a great deal of attention. Unfortunately, it seems that there's just too much taking place right now as far as the liberal open door immigration policies are concerned.
So sorry to interrupt, Japhy. Are we doing 2 hours today or just the one?
90 minutes is typically what we do, actually.
Okay, cool. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. So basically, the Trudeau government, I'm not sure if you've heard of this. I just came to my attention the other day how when Trudeau, unfortunately, I wish I could be more respectful towards the guy, but I can't bring myself around to doing that. I had to
delete a couple of live streams that I did because I was actually gagging physically at the sight of New Zealand's current Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. I have a physical reaction when I see the billboards. It's extraordinary. I can't stop myself from having this. It makes me feel physically ill.
There's something to that because I'm on the same camp as you when it comes to these most prominent high-level politicians. Bill Clinton is one of the worst. Old men, the Bushes and people, individuals like that, where it is really difficult to. For me to watch and to listen to, because we all know, of course, just what supreme bullshit artists they are. Basically liars and wholly compromised, so anyways, carrying right along here, there's so many issues to that we could get into, of course, and I think we should turn the focus right now back to the two gentlemen we have here waiting in the wings. Now, we did hear a little bit from Pirate Larry earlier. Let's go to Reverend Jim first of all here, and then see what Pirate Larry has to say in response. But Jim, you've been up there in the crow's nest, keeping a watch over things, of course, as we live stream here this week, show number 193 of Pirate Radio Podcasts, with our good friend and fellow pirate matey, Vinny Eastwood out of New Zealand. What do you see from your vantage point there, Jim? What's on your mind? What's on our listeners' minds too, as well? Hopefully you're following the comments. I'm having difficulty here, as always, because there's just so much happening that I've got to keep watching on just so many different screens and activities here. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, we got a conversation of comparative political systems with Europe, because I've got some Finns in the house and some Germans in the house, and But I was also looking over at anti-Semitic Kiwi's comments, and he was talking about how some of the judges down in New Zealand only know how to say, "I reserve my commentary," so that they won't make a judgment on things.
And they're all related. And they're all related.
Not all, but the vast majority are. And if anybody wants to look at further information on the wholesale judicial corruption in New Zealand, they'd best be looking for Vince Siemer, Siemer, on my channel. He's currently on business in the United States at the moment, so I've been unable to secure him for a broadcast, but it is coming. And he and activist who's no longer with us, Penny Bright, were instrumental in exposing how corrupt New Zealand is. For example, in New Zealand, you don't have to have any records of any of the proceedings in court if a judge wills it so. You can turn off the media coverage. You can say that you're not allowed to report that or you're going to jail. That's how the corruption is kept concealed in this country.
What percentage of the judiciary are actually Freemasons?
I haven't got a figure for that because it's a secret society. However, about a month before the Christchurch Mosque massacre, a new Freemasonic temple was opened up in Christchurch, which they allowed the public to attend. And the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, was given a Freemasonic scholarship to get her degree at Waikato University, and the former Prime Minister, John Key, was a high-level Freemason as well, who made an all-seeing eye Freemasonic hand sign when he gave his first picture in the Prime Minister's office to the camera. And both of these people have been pictured by Freemasons New Zealand at prize givings there, so that it's fairly incestuous.
Indeed,
and,
John.
Just to add to that, the former ACT Party leader was the first successful private prosecution by a man named Graham McCready. Now, when basically what he did was, Kim.com wanted to give him $50,000 for his mayoral campaign. And you have to declare any donations above $25,000. So what John Banks did, he's a former police commissioner, a Freemason, and a former head of the ACT Party, which backed up the National Party, which again was headed by John Key, a Freemason. He walked into court, and he had all these massive charges of corruption. He admitted even to the police what he had done. That's evidence against him, and we were expecting this to be very interesting indeed. He walks into the court wearing a Freemasonic pin on his chest. The judge said, "Well, Mr. Banks, you've admitted your guilt. Here is the evidence, and you've done this, and you've done that, and you've done this. But because of the man you are, because of your honourable record of service for the police, because of your wonderful service to the community as the former mayor of Auckland, because of your service to the country as the leader of the ACT Party," and in my head I was going, okay, the sentence is going down and down and down and down. So the biggest private prosecution for political corruption in New Zealand history was closed off with a whimper. He got curfew on the weekends only, and he didn't even honour it and wasn't even pulled up on it. That is the New Zealand judiciary. That is the Freemasonic order in New Zealand.
It's pretty disgraceful, of course, and something more should be done about it on that front. And I know in England, the UK, a number of years ago, there was an effort to have anyone who was a member of the judiciary to prior to to donning the robes or taking on the position to declare whether or not they were a member of any fraternal order or secret society such as the Masons. And of course there are many other groups as well too that people can freely belong to, but I see nothing wrong with declaring your membership in these organizations, agencies, or societies. It's another matter to get as far as the nuts and bolts are concerned.
And that brings up an important point, Japhy, as well. Not everybody who is a Freemason is a corrupt SOB. Not every Freemason has any idea what Freemasonry is about. I recall my friend Red, who was a member of the Blue Lodge, that's about the third degree of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. He said, yep, we only have to accept one thing, that there is a higher power. Now, if he had persisted in the lodge, and he hadn't been for many, many years, if he'd been special and been tapped on the shoulder and gotten up to the 28th degree, then he would have been asked to have a different initiation, where instead of honouring the people of New Zealand first and foremost above all, to instead honour the Brotherhood first and foremost of all. So as I say, there are many different types of Freemasonry and Freemasons. Not all are corrupt. Not all have any idea what goes on at the highest levels, and a lot of people forget that, and they tar everything with the same brush. And it's the equivalent to going to work at the fryer at KFC and expecting to meet Colonel Sanders, who gives you the secret recipe on the first day.
Great analogy. What I've heard actually is that it's ultimately at its core, Freemasonry is a form of crypto-Judaism. A lot of people don't know that. They haven't heard about that, and it's a well-guarded secret, although if people do their research, they might come across that.
I believe
same kind of information.
I believe David Livingston, who I had on my show, and this is back when I was doing my silly broadcasts, and I think I offended him, and quite rightly so. And haven't been able to get him back on the show since, but he illustrated within his works that the basis of Judaism and the basis of Freemasonry was the Kabbalah.
Right. Sounds about appropriate, essentially. Or, I'm not an expert in the area. I know that you had a guest recently. I've downloaded the interview with the young fellow that you had on board there. It was just a couple weeks ago, maybe about a month. You hopefully remember who I'm talking about.
James Wright.
There you go. And so the Kabbalah almost certainly, you'll find it figuring into the equation. And it's something that, it's a way that, think about it though, talk about being hoodwinked, having the wool pulled over your eyes. They have so many of these Gentile goys who all they're required to do for entrance into the organization is to profess a belief in a supreme power of some kind. Like basically it ends up being, I think, is what's known as the grand architect of the universe. Ultimately the word is Jabolan. They don't know this, of course, but I mean, guys like us who'd have nothing better to do than spend too much time digging around, researching all the darkest corners of the internet. Yeah, Jabolan, that's what they'll come across. It's a really strange looking creature it's a combination of, I think it's like a frog and a spider. Don't know what the third one is basically, but Jah is in Jah, Rastafari or Jehovah. Bull is as in Baal, and Jabolan, I'm not sure what the third one is. So there you go. There's once again, need for the experts to be part of the conversation. conversation here, not just the amateur hacks.
And you don't necessarily, as I mentioned, the Pareto distribution at the beginning of the show, you can have an idea of what it's about and just in general, but let's not pretend that we know everything that we're talking about. These are just the general factoids and things of that nature that we can elucidate on, and if people wish to read further or know more, they can do their own research. And this is just a very, very surface level summary just based on the topic matter.
Indeed. And another reason why I would like to promote more of the feature that we have here, really, that is available to some extent, at least. It's not perfect. It'd be, a telephone call-in show would be ideal, really. But we do have the Skype, and we do have our contact information in the show description area. So we've also got the comment section going here like gangbusters, really. So we got a really great crew, a bunch of people here: Zane Ivey, Angel Espino, Jeffrey Wenger. Who do we have here that's dropped in? It's a newbie. If I get your name right here, I'll give it a shot. Or Aurelia Miranda. What a great name that is. Wow. Aurelia Miranda. It's good. It has to be some like Spanish or something like that, I guess. Anyways, that's just over on Facebook. They're not leaving too many comments over there, but on YouTube, most definitely, and including the likes of the people that we mentioned earlier, of course. I'm not sure if there's any need to, go over that once again, but wow, yeah, things are definitely on fire over there. William F. Cuckley dropping in here near the tail end of things, and I think we're probably going to, maybe carry on here for the next 15-20 minutes tops, basically in the home stretch here, winding things down. Let's get Pirate Larry back into the conversation here. He's always got a lot of great insight. Of course, he's he's been around the block a time or two. In fact, I don't know if he wants to get into his family's personal history or not, but you had mentioned something that kind of piqued my interest a little earlier. Larry, do you want to talk a little? I'm not sure what's on your mind, really, as far as how do you like to segue into the conversation here, but your dad had a pretty peculiar job, didn't he? Very fascinating career and story to share. I'm not sure if you're game or not, but you're the floor is yours.
Yeah, my dad did the staff work for the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. This is the same treaty that Obama got Iran to sign. At this state, President Trump is negotiating for a new missile treaty, and hopefully we'll get to the point where they'll ban nuclear weapons altogether. But the spent nuclear rods and stuff that they use in armor-piercing bullets, I don't know. They kill our guys just as much as they kill the enemy.
Hey, let me just ask you something in addition to this whole business of who your father was and what his what sort of line of work he was occupied with over the years. But do you remember telling me that story? And I don't know if you want to get into it here or not, but this is a bit of a curveball. It kind of ties into what we were discussing here as far as secret societies are concerned, Freemasons and whatnot. Maybe the all-seeing eye or cap of the pyramid. Just any the Illuminati actually is what I'm driving at here, and if you care to share any thoughts on the record regarding their A lot of people say that the Illuminati doesn't even exist these days. But do you see what I'm getting at there as far as angle or relationship?
You know, in the war of ideas, killing 2/3 of the population on the planet is a really bad idea. But there's some people that are up to that type of conspiracy, and I'm just happy that I don't see chemtrails over, in the sky anymore. The sky
really?
is blue. Yeah.
About that. Wonder why would that be the case?
Well, the president stopped funding the UN.
No kidding. So you're saying that the UN has been behind the chemtrail program all this time?
Yeah. They've been doing it.
Jeez. And he pulled out of the WHO just recently as well too. So that was pretty dramatic, and I think a great move on his part. I'd like to look into it a little more, but it makes a lot of sense to me, especially when you stop to consider how dominated that organization is apparently by the communist Chinese. Which, I mean, people refer to them as communists, although really when it comes right down to it, you could just as easily call them fascists. I think it'd be a better way of putting things, frankly, but
it's a total authoritarianism and it's like another Han dynasty, and they're completely racist and, enslaving the Uyghurs and trying to destroy their heritage, enslaving the Tibetans and trying to destroy their heritage, destroying their temples and their statues. Hey, that sounds familiar. Where are we getting statues destroyed? Not just China.
Yeah, there you go. So, and I think, I'm not sure if it was with you the other day or someone else, Larry, but we brought up the topic of the statue of Chairman Mao in, is it Richmond, BC, just outside of Vancouver. And if there was a statue that people might want to think about taking down, that would be top of my list. So get that the hell out of Canada and take your Chairman Mao and take him back to China with you and do whatever you like. So I see a lot of activity, and thank you for those comments, Larry. Do you see anything else taking place out there? We are entering the home stretch here. So what any of the comments that have really captured your attention? Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask our guest if he knew Susie 3D.
No, sorry.
All right, she was Occupy New Zealand, and had to.
You mean Susie Dawson?
Yeah, Susie Dawson.
Yeah. She activist Penny Bright, I'm the moderator of the Honouring Penny Bright page, really didn't like Susie, and we had to do a little bit of a investigation into them during the last election, and we did a series exposing pretty much every party, and Susie was the only party that actually replied, and her party got the lowest voter turnout out of every party in the last election. So it's just it's a complex issue, and I don't really know that much about her, and I haven't seen really much of the work that she's been doing.
She was a targeted individual, and there's a video that she did on the internet called Person of Interest, and that's all the things that the FBI and our FBI was doing to harass her, target her.
COINTELPRO.
Yeah.
That kind of deal. Person of interest, it's interesting that you mentioned that. There was a comment that Vinny had made earlier about living a life of danger, living on the edge sort of deal, and maybe sticking your head out a little bit or taking a stand once in a while for crying out loud and saying enough is enough. You know, if we either exercise and use and employ our rights and freedoms, or we lose them. That's my kind of way of looking at things. But also, person of interest. I mean, always in these police reports and investigations, so-and-so they were considered a person of interest, or we have a person of interest we're presently keeping close tabs on. Well, who the hell wouldn't want to be considered a person of interest? What other options are we left with? On my headstone, epitaph, I would love to be considered a person of interest, because I don't know if there's anyone out there listening who wants to go to their grave being considered just a boring slob, of no particular, having not really achieved too much over the course of their lifetime, or left behind any even just minor legacy of any sort. So yeah, I think it's important for all of us to become people of interest. Let's put it that way. We should all work on striving to achieve that goal.
Yeah,
Vinny.
Let's not forget that the main banker and evidence provider for Susie being a targeted individual is Susie. And the other backer that she has to back up her story is a guy named who called himself a Red Star 309s, and she's friends with him. So there's nothing objective from third-party sources or anything like that has been confirmed as yet. You just have to take Susie's word for it. And this is also backed up by Red Star 309s, who called Penny Bright, one of the country's top activists at the time, an SIS informant on a live stream. So the trust there for me isn't there, and in fact I recall my very first encounter with Nines, as he's known. He said, get down here to Occupy, set up, and do live streams for us every day, and because this is it, Vinny, this is it. We're going to topple the whole machine here. And I recall thinking at the time, like, I've been in this for years, and I had been already at that point. And I didn't see people in tents toppling the world's largest technocratic control grid. I was thinking of what are these New World Order people sitting there going, dear God, these people have tents. We didn't count on that. Whatever will we do? All we've got is unlimited nuclear weapons and unlimited slaves with guns. We couldn't possibly be able to do anything about people in tents, could we? And then, of course, Penny Bright was the lead litigant against the local city council, who the police chief of Central Auckland Police said that, yes, these protesters have a right to do their protest. And despite the fact that Penny Bright was in court on behalf of Occupy Auckland and doing all the legal paperwork, she never had a day's legal training in her life, but she knows how to dot her I's and cross her T's, and doing all of that, she was still subject to attacks from Susie, and was very vitriolic in her criticism of Susie itself. Now, what happened there to Occupy is, despite the fact that Penny Bright managed to get a signed document from the Chief of Auckland Police, Central, that the protesters had a right to be there, they had free speech protected, and that the police wouldn't be told to move them on, the police chief then went on holiday for a weekend. That same weekend, the new mayor of Auckland, who was from South Auckland, had the Manukau police come into Central Auckland, this was outside their jurisdiction really, to remove all the protesters. But the police didn't do any of the removing. They just sat there and protected the private security who were hired by the council to do the removing, because it was illegal for New Zealand police to stop you from protesting, to stop you from having free speech, but apparently it wasn't illegal for the elected council to hire private security to do what it was illegal for police to do. And because nobody could be prosecuted, they just removed all the tents, removed all the protesters, and it was over. So the corruption that happens here in New Zealand is pretty significant, and when we go out and we try and prove things, there's a lot of muddy water with people's reputations and their past and things of that nature, and these points do need to be raised. Just as much as anybody needs to raise them to a large degree. When the subject comes up, it's important to tell the truth about it, no matter what kind of consequences you will get. And when I spoke out against Susie, as I'm doing now, what will probably happen, as happened then, is a huge amount of vitriolic trolling and abuse from her supporters will be coming my way, and that's just the price you have to pay for telling the truth.
Penny Bright and the SIS, I'd like to have you just address that in brief as probably what's going to be our last point here really to address. But before you
I could address
do
that in seconds.
Well, okay, but just hang on a second. Before you do that, let me I'll share some good news with you and the rest of our listeners, Vinny. We plugged in through Facebook over to the David Icke group. It's a private group. I figured, what the hell? Let's launch a share party. I think that's what it's called. Is it a share or
watch party?
Watch party. There we go. So we launched that, and we picked up 11 people altogether coming to us via the David Icke group over on Facebook. We have a couple of other watch parties launched here as well too. So really, almost to the point where there's too many people to keep track of. So, although we do encourage you to keep your comments coming, as always, of course, and to remember to drop by WPRPN.com. Sign up is free for people like Vinny here and other guests and supporters of the show. We have a few other goodies that we are able to offer them, including complimentary in-house URL member site subdomains, which if you do not find yourself either a guest or someone who's helping build the network, essentially, then we ask that you take a subscription out, actually, on a yearly basis. And that is quite interesting, actually, because for anyone who you manage to bring to the network, you receive a commission. It's like around 30 some odd % actually. So the rest goes, well, the other 1/3 goes directly to charity, and the other 1/3 goes back to the communal kitty. Hashtag WWRHD. What would Robin Hood do? Let's have you address that final point then, Vinny, if you will, regarding Penny Bright. I've never heard of her. It sounds like she may have passed away.
Yes, she did. There's a playlist on my channel called RIP Penny Bright with over 100 videos. She was the most prolific guest on my show. She exposed vaccines, she exposed fluoride, she exposed local council corruption, she exposed central government corruption. She was attended international anti-corruption conferences and tried to inform them about the problems that were going on in New Zealand. She was absolutely all over the place, and like a lot of activists like me, aren't necessarily the easiest people to get along with. But I still have great respect for all the work that she did, and she was essentially my initiation into New Zealand corruption, and she opened my eyes and the eyes of many others, and we need her right now, but she's not with us anymore. and Red Star 309s, and Susie Dawson accused her of being a state intelligence services agent, despite the fact that it was leaked that Penny Bright was on the top of near the top of the list of state intelligence services people of interest.
Right. So it sounds like it's almost that this other individual, the name that Larry brought up, that she could have herself either. There's a good possibility she might have been working in some COINTEL type capacity, collecting government pay. To put things in a nutshell, but
if I may, I'm so sorry. We're having a comment in the chat room by Rhonda Bethune here, who says we have you now, Vinny. Well done. And with respect, and I appreciate the compliment, but it's not due for me. I will never have the capacities or the experience that Penny Bright had. She is the woman with a ruler and pencil. She can bring down councils. She was in court all the time, beating the lawyers at their own games. She was the person where the rubber met the road. She read the documents. She deciphered legislation. She did so much in terms of her basic skill base that I cannot begin to even hope to rival, and that's why she is sorely and greatly missed. And that's why I put up the RIP Penny Bright playlist, because all her knowledge is contained within it. And I would encourage people, if they want to really get a very credible backstory on New Zealand, go back and watch that playlist, and you will be completely amazed by the proficiency this woman has at laying out the facts and details.
Gotta ask, how did she pass away?
She was killed in hospice. They refused to give her diabetic medication, and she slipped into a coma and died.
How old was she?
She was maybe 63, I think. I don't know exactly. I can't recall. I'm not terribly great with remembering exact dates and numbers.
So
she was well. Basically, what happened was, I'll just give the context to that.
Sure.
She had cancer. She went down to her family, and she started feeling really sick. And turned out that she had this massive wad of fluid in her belly, and some pretty severe cancer. She came back to Auckland, and we had her partner at the time, Julian, who's like totally up on alternative health, right, totally up on it. And so we had people around the country bringing some medications that perhaps the hospital wouldn't have allowed, but her condition was improving, but she was still a diabetic, and her partner Julian left her one night and expected the nurses to take care of her, give her a diabetic medication. But in hospice care, their job is to help you die well. So they refused to give her diabetic medication. She slipped into a coma and died. And Julian came in the next morning, and she wasn't alive. That's how you get rid. That's how you get rid of your activists, ladies and gentlemen. And I recall Evelyn Gilbert. There's also a rest in peace, R.I.P. Evelyn Gilbert playlist. She was the second most prolific guest on my show, and she also died under similar circumstances in hospice after a stoush with cancer.
And there is, of course, a lot of speculation, people often talking about how cancer of various kinds are contracted by people. You refer to them as activists. Vinny, I've come up with a new little catchphrase I've coined. I don't know if anyone had thought of this before, but I prefer the term engaged citizens, so really, because this activist thing has such it's taken on such a pejorative type. I
would call them guardians. That is what they did. There are two choices when you find out what is going on in this world. You can choose to be a guardian of your fellow man, or you can choose to profit from your knowledge as a predator. And these two ladies were the most significant guardians of New Zealand, and they both died within months of each other. And I hadn't felt grief that strong before, and their loss has been difficult to bear.
How recent was this?
This was years ago.
Oh, so they passed away. It's been a long time since they've left us.
2 to 3 years, I think.
Oh, I see. Wow. Well, rest in peace, upward and onward.
Well, the point is, we need to honor their memory.
Sure.
Honor what they fought for.
That's right. That's right. And I guess the best way we could do that is by going to your channel and taking a look at the two playlists that you have there in place via YouTube, is what you've been saying. So you have a BitChute as well too. Let's not forget, we've got all your links here down in the show description area. I'm not sure if you added any of ours from that you copied from the last time that we spoke or not, but yeah, the VinnyEastwoodShow.com, that's the main website people want to drop by. Of course, you can find them on Facebook, YouTube, BitChute, and Patreon, where you are doing amazing via Patreon. So I
think this is all due to the New Zealand Public Party supporters and audience. They have come on board and they have supported me massively, and many of them had never heard of me until I was interviewing Billy TK, and many of them feel like the Vinny Eastwood Show is their home now.
We actually had mentioned this to you just behind the scenes via Skype. Billy TK is someone who, I know he's a busy guy right now. There's only 60 days until the election, something
58.
Like that. Well, okay, but I mean, if we could somehow work it into our schedule.
Oh, sorry, 48 actually. It's even less.
If we could somehow work it into our schedule, we'd love to speak to him at some point, whether it's during our news segment or the feature, the Friday night feature end of things, which here in Asia for you and I that's Wednesdays and Saturdays, Tuesdays and Fridays back in the West there for people in North America, essentially. But yeah, definitely sounds like somebody worth speaking to and doing our part to better help get the message out as well too, what they stand for. Just a brief rundown then. The New Zealand Public Party is one of the political organizations that's, I think, just recently been launched in the last year or two, really. And they formed a coalition with this other group, which, if I'd been taking better notes,
New Zealand.
Okay, so that's great that they can work together in that manner. That really, strength in numbers. That's quite empowering for sure.
What's very sad is that it was a last resort. Advance New Zealand were the only party in New Zealand to actually want to work with Billy. Everybody else wants to keep to themselves and keep losing, and it's just
keep selling out is really what it comes down to. They're selling out.
No. These are honourable and decent individuals. I've met and interviewed many of the members of these parties, and to give up what they have, to give up their parties and give it to Billy was a huge ask, and I completely understand why they didn't do it, because they've been in this fight for a long time, and it is their fight, and they have been standing up for New Zealanders, and they perceive perhaps Billy as a Johnny-come-lately here to steal their thunder. But in my opinion, Billy TK and the New Zealand Public Party and Advance New Zealand are not Johnny-come-latelys here to steal your thunder. We are the reinforcements here to help you turn the tide.
When I talked this, through that comment out regarding the business of selling out, that was directed more toward the establishment parties who've been doing business with foreign entities for probably quite a few years now, so that it's the same thing in Canada, really, is what I had seen, even up until the point to where I exited on Canada Day, if you can believe that, back in 2002. So it's been a while for me here in South Korea. But yeah, it was the establishment parties. I'm not talking about any alternative grassroots.
I didn't think you were in retrospect. But what I said still needed to be said.
Okay. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was just trying to, and then from my end, just trying to clarify things as well. So turning of the tide, absolutely, and. That would be something. So Iceland, of course, has done a lot of great work. They really took their bankers to task, holding them accountable in a big way. So it would be good to see something more of this, manifesting across the world of grassroots, populist, dare I say, uprisings. Power to the people, I guess, is what it comes down to. But we still haven't gotten clear on the platform. We'll end on this note, just to be clear, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there listening that would like to know, mostly from our end of things. Presumably, most of your listeners have read over their platform and got a clear sense of what they stand for. What is it exactly in just a rough overview? Can you share with us?
The Advance New Zealand and New Zealand Public Party Alliance stands for freedom, sovereignty, independence, transparency and accountability. They wish to reclaim New Zealand for all the people. They wish to kick out any kind of infiltration, any kind of foreign interference within our political system. They wish to end the poisoning of our lands by various means, the poisoning of our waters by various means. They wish to end the corrupt banking system. They wish to end all of the forms of tyranny that have been imported into New Zealand under the Agenda 21 protocols, which Rosa Corey, who we've done an interview with on the channel, and I would encourage people to go and watch that Rosa Corey interview. If you do not, you don't care about this country, please go and watch that interview with Rosa Corey, ladies and gentlemen. Become informed about the true threat that faces this country. Anything and everything that I have been bringing up on my channel for the last decade with regards to freedom, independence, sovereignty, transparency, accountability, the poisoning of the public, the deception of the media, the New Zealand Public Party and Advance New Zealand stand against it all. And they are the first, and they might be the last, to do this. And that is why we need to understand the precipice that we stand upon. There is no going back from this. We will not get a second chance. We have one shot, ladies and gentlemen, and one shot is all we need.
that will be decided at the polls in less than 2 months, as you said, about 48 days now. So hopefully no electronic voting. Hopefully New Zealand is paper ballots and pencils, hand-counted ballots, nothing, nowhere near the total debacle that we have witnessed, via the U.S. and in particular, not really setting the best example as far as fairness and transparency is concerned. But Vinny, it's been a great ride once again. This is, I think, about the third, maybe fourth time that we've connected on this front. So really appreciate it. We got some guests that we'd like to send your way as well, too. Potentially, I know a couple names here, Will Champion and Jim Gottstein, who we recently interviewed. So, people out there listening, if you haven't checked out the interviews that we did put together with them, be sure to drop by our BitChute channel. We're not really big into promoting YouTube, although we would like to get 40 more subscribers. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, if we can get those 40 subscribers, we'll have 1,000 backing us via YouTube, and that means that we're able to qualify monetization.
Oh, and
finally.
Live streaming as well.
That's what I don't know. That's what we're doing now. So is there something more that we're missing out on?
Oh, maybe not, actually. I could be mistaken.
Yeah. No, we're live streaming now through YouTube, Facebook, and DLive using the Restream technology that has been made available to us here. We very much appreciate. So much more to address. So many issues that are currently present and a part of our world, which, one of the things I was going to ask you about earlier, Vinny, was your meditation. You were talking about depression. I think you were talking about depression. I know I brought it up, and how energy levels, let's say, the way that we're drawn into these issues, and we take, on a very personal level, and there's a lot of energy that we invest. And it's difficult sometimes to be able to effectively recharge our batteries, to ground ourselves, and just not really maintain a relative degree of sanity as well too. Hopefully, perspective and everything else that goes along with it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking you're kind of a meditation sort of guy. You do a little bit of that, probably, breathing, exercises.
If I may, just explain here a little bit. Just conduct an experiment with me now, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are. If you can close your eyes, do so. When I'm stressed or something like that, this is what I do. And repeat after me, Japhy. Close your eyes. Where am I?
Where am I?
I'm right here.
I'm right here.
What time is it?
What time is it?
It's right now.
It's right now.
Is there a threat coming to kill me in the next 60 seconds?
Is there a threat coming to kill me in the next 60 seconds?
Just have a look around. No? Open your eyes, take a deep breath. And you're back in reality. Okay? The reason why we get depressed is because the person looking at us in the mirror is not the person we want to be. The reason why we feel anxiety is because many people don't understand the fight, flight, and freeze response. You've heard of fight or flight, but you haven't heard of the freeze. When you're in a dangerous situation, you will have a choice to run away from that danger, to face it, or to play dead. And at the moment when people are faced with the threat of a totalitarian government, can you just kill it by yourself? No, you can't. Can you escape it permanently and escape its influence? No, you can't. So then people freeze. The threat is not upon you within the next 60 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. Do not live your lives in anxiety. You are right here. It is right now. And there is no threat. Please always remember that when you're feeling down and alone and frightened.
Ram Dass, the prestigious, very well known. He was a guru throughout the 60s in the psychedelic era. One of the catchphrases that he coined, as I understand it, was simply "Be here now," and that's something that I constantly am. That's Buddhism, actually. In many ways, people talk about meditation. Well, for me, it's just always every breath I take is meditation. Be here now, and exactly what you've laid out there, Vinny, I fully concur with and very much appreciate. We conducted a thought intention experiment a couple months ago here during one of our shows, very spontaneous sort of occurrence, and it proved to be successful, believe it or not. The woman who had found herself in the emergency room at the hospital suddenly just stood up and came to her senses, essentially. The health issues that she was said to have been having to deal with were completely had vanished, and so she left and went back home right at the very time that we had been asked by her husband to do pray or essentially produce what we did there with the help of Nori Love and Augie Nost, who guided us through that thought intention experiment. So could just be a coincidence, of course, or there might be something to it. This business of the collective mind, not the hive mind. Hopefully, that's a little too kind of creepy. that's maybe one of the things that we're having to contend with here right now and to deal with is this faux singularity. So, yes, too little time, so many issues. Vinny Eastwood, thank you once again. Episode number 193 of Pirate Radio Podcasts. It's been a great ride. We're going to let you go, actually, and then maybe catch up with you on the back end of things, whether you are doing an after show on Discord or not, as you, I think, quite.
Oh no. I've got visitors, and in fact, I was supposed to be with them over an hour ago. I don't get to interact with many people face to face, and so yeah, it's been a bit of a sacrifice being here.
That's great.
But like I say, these sacrifices are necessary.
Oh, and we're going to do what we can, of course, to get more people to have a chance to listen to this week's show. And we totally appreciate you dropping by and helping to make this happen. And we'd like to see your spirits rise up, and just as with everyone, to be happy. We all deserve to be happy, and especially someone like you, currently right now, who's kind of on a bit of just. It's going through a lot, it seems, with a lot of a weight on your shoulders and feeling a lot of responsibility and everything else, pressure, I guess.
I feel none.
Sometimes.
I'm doing what I was born to do, what I was made to do, what I was bred to do. This is no more difficult than breathing for me.
Good.
This is my skill set. This is my privilege. Not everybody can do this. And so he who has the ability has the responsibility. I don't want to be a talk radio show host. I don't want to be a YouTuber. I am doing it because it is what is necessary at the moment. Preferably, I'd like to be a lead singer in my band, I'd like to be making feature films with my friends, but my country and the world and my daughter's life is at stake.
Yeah, there comes a time where people definitely have to take a stand. So hopefully more will find you to be inspiring, of course, and the message that New Zealand's latest populist political parties, what they're putting out, that it's something we're supporting and getting behind, and that it's going to reflect positively at the polls coming up in just under 50 days now. So thank you once again, though, Vinny. We are going to let you go. Was there anything else that you would just like to close on, as far as, I mean, we've plugged your websites, of course, and how people can contact you. It's all available down there in the show description area. I'm sure we'll meet again here at some point, but any just closing comments or final words, or has everything pretty much already been spoken?
Never. See, there is a joke, I'm telling you. The Vinny Eastwood Show is listener supported, so if you value the support being given to the ANZPP, please consider making a donation or starting an automatic payment. And if you're watching this on my channel, the details for that are below. The VinnyEastwoodShow.com is the website. That's Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question, and Eastwood, like, go ahead, make my news. And go ahead, ladies and gentlemen, donate through PayPal, support us on Patreon, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and above all else, the most important and the most difficult thing to get people to do is to share these broadcasts out there. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no advertising budget, and the YouTube algorithms prevent the vast majority of people from even getting notifications about these shows, and it is the individual contributions of the listenership that is the very reason why my show was even able to get off the ground in the first place. And at the moment, we're just flying right now. The support has been truly tremendous, and I hope to get even more support as we get into the real thick of this election season. It is going to turn ugly. Ladies and gentlemen, we are up against people who have both no rules and no scruples, no conscience. And we must steel ourselves against it and be hard and be able to take it, because the country needs us to. Thank you, Japhy.
All right, my friend. All the best once again, as we like to say here, courtesy of the Robin Hood. Happy sailing. Vinny is off to...
All right, we've been disconnected, ladies and gentlemen. So once again, thank you so much to everybody who supports the show. Thank you so much to everybody who shares it. Thank you so much for everybody who likes it, and especially thank you to all of those people who remain unnamed. My wonderful mods in the chat room, and all the people who have started up automatic payments through the PayPal, Patreon, and KiwiBank, and some people have been supporting me for near on a decade, and I am just an ungrateful little SOB, a 6'6" little SOB, but nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, I have to remind myself to be grateful to you. Thank you so much for your time, for your attention, and thank you for being good people, most and more. Thank you for listening to the Vinny Eastwood Show. I am not a credible journalist. I'm an incredible journalist.